My mother-in-law's welcome to the family invitation had gold lettering and embossed edges. Elegant, expensive. My name wasn't on it. Patricia Reynolds was. Michael's ex-girlfriend from college. The woman Barbara had begged him to marry for 3 years before I came along. I stood in the doorway of their Connecticut estate, wearing the navy dress I'd bought specifically for this occasion, holding that invitation I'd found crumpled in our mailbox like trash. Inside, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the party in progress. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, and Patricia, blonde and radiant in a cream-colored dress, seated right next to my husband. Her hand was on his arm. Barbara was smiling at them like she'd finally gotten what she wanted. I should have turned around. Should have driven home and cried like I'd done a dozen times before. Instead, I walked through those doors. Every head turned. Barbara's smile froze. Patricia's hand dropped from Michael's arm. I sat down in the empty chair across from them, reached into my purse, and slid a manila envelope across the tablecloth toward my husband. "Sign these." Michael looked at the envelope, then at his mother. "What is this?" "Open it." He did. His face went pale. "These are divorce papers? Your mother wanted Patricia to be family so badly. Now she can be. I'm done." Barbara's hand flew to her chest. "You can't be serious. This is a misunderstanding. You've been explaining for 2 years. I'm finished listening." That's when Barbara fainted. What she didn't know was that those papers weren't the end. The real bomb was still coming. The one that would destroy everything she'd spent 6 years hiding. Let me take you back, because this story isn't about an invitation. It's about a woman who spent 2 years trying to earn acceptance from people who had already decided she wasn't good enough. If you've ever married someone whose family treated you like an outsider, if you've ever competed with a ghost from your husband's past, if you've ever smiled through humiliation because you loved someone enough to endure their family, this story is for you. I met Michael at a friend's wedding in Boston. I was 22, working as a junior marketing coordinator at a small firm, still figuring out who I was. He was 26, finishing his MBA, charming in a quiet way that felt different from the loud confidence I was used to. We talked for 3 hours at the reception. He asked for my number, called the next day. Our first date lasted 6 hours because neither of us wanted it to end. Michael told me about Patricia early on. They dated for 4 years in college and after. His family loved her. His mother especially. Patricia came from old Connecticut money that matched the Hartley family fortune. They'd been planning the wedding before Patricia ended things. She'd met someone else, a financier in Manhattan, left Michael devastated and Barbara furious. "My mother never forgave her for leaving," Michael said on our third date, swirling his wine. "Or me, I think, for not being enough to make her stay." I should have heard the warning in those words. I was too busy falling in love to listen. We dated for a year before I met his family. Michael kept putting it off. "They're a lot," he'd say. "My mother especially. She has opinions." I thought I understood. My own family was complicated. Weren't everyone's? I had no idea what I was walking into. The first dinner at the Hartley estate was in April, cherry blossoms blooming along the driveway. Everything picture perfect and intimidating. Barbara met us at the door in a cream silk blouse and pearls, looking exactly like what she was. Old money, old expectations, old grudges. She looked me up and down the way you'd examine produce at a market, checking for bruises. "So you're the one keeping Michael so busy lately. Not nice to meet you. Not welcome to our home." An accusation disguised as small talk. I smiled and said something about Michael being worth the time. She didn't smile back. Dinner was an interrogation. Where did I grow up? Ohio, a small town outside Cleveland. My father was a plant manager. My mother was a nurse. Barbara's eyebrows rose slightly at each answer, like I was confirming something she'd already suspected. When I mentioned my state school education, she actually said, "How practical." Patricia went to Yale, of course, but there's nothing wrong with practical. Every topic somehow circled back to Patricia. Patricia's family had a house in the Hamptons. Patricia spoke 3 languages. Patricia had been such a lovely presence at their charity events. By dessert, I felt like I'd been competing with a ghost for 3 hours. A ghost who'd left Michael, broken his heart, married someone else. But apparently that didn't matter. Patricia was still the standard I'd never meet. "She's just protective," Michael said in the car afterward. "She really did love Patricia. It's not about you." But it was about me. Every dinner, every holiday, every family gathering for the next year made that clear. Christmas that year, I gave Barbara a cashmere scarf I'd saved 3 weeks' salary to afford. She unwrapped it, smiled politely, and said, "How thoughtful. Patricia always knew I preferred silk, but this is lovely." She wore it once, at dinner that night. I never saw it again. When I mentioned it months later, she said she must have donated it by accident. These things happen with clutter. Easter, Barbara seated me at the far end of the table, separated from Michael by his aunt, cousin, and 2 family friends I'd never met. I couldn't participate in conversations. When I tried to contribute, Barbara would talk over me or change the subject. Michael found me afterward and apologized. "She'll warm up once she knows you better." She didn't warm up. She calculated. Michael's birthday in June. Barbara threw him a party at the estate. 50 guests, catered food, a band. I helped plan it for weeks. When I arrived, I discovered Barbara had arranged the seating chart to put me at a table with her golf friends' adult children, none of whom knew Michael. Patricia's mother was at the main table. When I asked why, Barbara said, "The Reynoldses have known Michael since he was 12. You've known him less than 2 years. If you've ever felt invisible at a table full of people who were supposed to become your family, you know exactly how those dinners felt." Keep reading. Michael proposed in September, on a hiking trail overlooking the coast of Maine. Just the 2 of us. No family pressure, no expectations. I said yes before he finished asking. We drove back to Connecticut that night to share the news. Barbara's reaction is burned into my memory. She looked at the ring, a modest diamond, what Michael could afford on his starting salary. She looked at me. Then she looked at her son and said, "Are you sure about this? Marriage is permanent, Michael. Some women are just temporary." She said it like I wasn't standing right there, like I was furniture. Michael's face reddened. "Mom, stop." But he didn't say more, didn't defend me, just changed the subject to wedding timelines and moved past the moment like it hadn't happened. I lay awake that night in Michael's childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, replaying those words. Temporary. Like I was a phase he'd grow out of. Like the ring on my finger meant nothing. I should have said something then. Should have demanded more from Michael, from Barbara, from myself. Instead, I convinced myself it would get better. That once we were married, once I'd proven I was committed, Barbara would accept me. Wedding planning was a battlefield. Barbara wanted control of everything: venue, flowers, catering, guest list. She wanted to hold it at her country club, where Patricia's engagement party had been 3 years earlier. "The Reynoldses are members there too," she said. "It would be wonderful to see them again." I stood my ground on that one. We got married at a vineyard in the Hudson Valley, neutral territory. Barbara complained about the drive, the food, my dress, which was pretty enough, I suppose, for off the rack. At the reception, I overheard her telling a friend that she'd hoped Michael would come to his senses before things got this far. Patricia called last month. She's divorced now. She asked about Michael. Then she sighed. But it's too late. He's made his choice. She said choice like it was a synonym for mistake. Our first year of marriage, Barbara visited constantly. Unannounced drop-bys at our apartment. Always with criticisms disguised as help. The curtains I'd chosen were wrong. The furniture too modern. My cooking was creative, which apparently meant bad. She rearranged our kitchen twice while I was at work. When I asked her to please call before coming over, she said, "Family doesn't need permission. At least, that's how it was with Patricia." There it was again. Patricia. Always Patricia. The ghost I couldn't escape. Michael was caught in the middle, or claimed to be. He'd apologize for his mother's behavior, promised to talk to her, then changed nothing. "She's always been like this," he'd say. "She doesn't mean harm, she just has high standards." High standards. Like I was a product that didn't meet specifications. Year 2, things escalated. Barbara started leaving me off email chains for family events. I'd show up at Sunday dinners I hadn't known were canceled, find the house empty, discover later there'd been a change of venue no one told me about. She'd post family photos on Facebook that somehow never included me, or were cropped just enough to cut me out. She understood social media enough to tag Patricia in a throwback photo from Michael's college graduation. Understood enough to comment, "Missing the good old days," with a heart emoji. That was March. I told myself it was passive-aggressive but harmless. Told myself I was overreacting. Then I found the first letter. I was looking for stamps in Barbara's home office during a family dinner in April. I opened the desk drawer and found a folder labeled Michael. Inside were letters. Handwritten letters from Patricia to Barbara, spanning years. Recent years. Post my marriage years. Patricia wrote about missing the family, about regretting her choices, about hoping Michael might find his way back someday. And Barbara's responses were there too, copies she'd kept. Barbara wrote about me, called me the situation, said Michael was going through a phase, said she was keeping the door open for when he came to his senses. They'd been corresponding for over a year. Barbara had been actively maintaining a relationship with her son's ex-girlfriend throughout his entire marriage to me. Keeping the door open. Like I was a temporary inconvenience they were waiting out. I put the letters back, went to the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. Something was shifting inside me, but I didn't understand what yet. Have you ever discovered that the people you trusted were working against you? What would you do? I didn't tell Michael about the letters. Maybe I wasn't ready for the conversation. Maybe I was afraid of what he'd say or wouldn't say. Instead, I started watching more carefully. Barbara's charity gala in May. Michael was on the guest list. I wasn't. When I asked about it, she said it was intimate seating. I found out later Patricia had been invited. She attended with her mother, and Barbara introduced her around as practically family. Michael came home that night smelling like Patricia's perfume, Gucci bloom. He said Patricia had hugged him hello and goodbye, that Barbara had seated them together, that it was awkward but harmless. "Your mother is actively trying to replace me with your ex-girlfriend." He sighed. That tired sigh I'd heard 100 times. "Brooke, you're being dramatic. Mom's difficult, I know, but she's not scheming." June, our second anniversary. Michael and I went to dinner at a nice restaurant in the city. Came home to find Barbara in our apartment. She'd let herself in with the emergency key we'd given her. She was sitting on our couch, looking at our wedding album, crying. "I'm sorry," she said when she saw us. "I was just feeling sentimental. Missing the old days." Before everything changed. The old days? Before I existed. Before Michael chose someone his mother didn't approve of. Michael comforted her, sat beside her, held her hand, told her everything was okay. I stood in the doorway of my own apartment, on my own anniversary, watching my husband console his mother about his marriage to me. That was the night I started keeping records. Dates, incidents, conversations. I didn't know what I'd do with them. I just needed proof that I wasn't crazy. The first time I saw Ethan, I didn't know who he was. It was August, a Sunday afternoon at Barbara's estate. I'd arrived early for dinner. Barbara was in the garden with a young boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old. Blonde hair, familiar features. He was laughing at something she'd said, and she was looking at him with an expression I'd never seen her wear. Pure, unconditional love. I'd never seen Barbara look at anyone like that. Certainly not me. Not even Michael. "Who's that?" I asked Richard, who was reading on the patio. He glanced up, then quickly looked away. "Neighbor's grandchild. Barbara babysits sometimes." Something about his answer felt wrong, the way he wouldn't meet my eyes. But I let it go. The invitation arrived in September. "Welcome to the family, a celebration." Gold lettering on cream cardstock. The guest of honor, according to the invitation, was Patricia Reynolds. I read it 3 times. A welcome to the family party for my husband's ex-girlfriend? While I, his actual wife, wasn't even named? I called Michael at work. "Did you know about this?" Long pause. "Know about what?" He didn't know. His mother had organized a welcome party for his ex-girlfriend and hadn't told him. Barbara's explanation. "It's a reunion, darling. Patricia's been through so much with the divorce. I thought it would be nice to remind her she still has people who care. You don't need to come if you're busy. I know Brooke keeps you on a short leash." Short leash, like I was the one restricting him. Saturday came. Michael said he wasn't going to the party. We ordered Thai food, watched a movie, tried to pretend everything was normal. At 9 o'clock his phone rang. "Barbara." He let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. He finally answered on the 5th call. His face changed as he listened. Confusion first, then something darker. He hung up without saying goodbye. "She wants me there. Says it's important. Says there's something I need to see." He was gone before I could argue. I sat alone in our apartment for 45 minutes. 45 minutes of wondering what Barbara had planned. 45 minutes of imagining Patricia at that party, surrounded by people who wished she was still Michael's wife. Then I made a decision. I put on my navy dress. Did my makeup carefully, deliberately. Applied lipstick darker than I usually wore. Looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone I barely recognized. Not angry, just clear. I grabbed my purse, the invitation, and one more thing. The manila envelope I'd picked up from my lawyer 3 days earlier. The divorce papers I'd had drawn up. Just in case. I hadn't told Michael about the lawyer. It was my insurance policy. My escape hatch. The proof to myself that I wasn't trapped. I drove to the estate with the radio off. No distractions. Just the sound of my own breathing and the decision crystallizing in my mind. Either Michael would finally choose me tonight, or I would finally choose myself. There were nights during those 2 years when I wondered if I was the problem. If Barbara was right, and I just didn't fit. If Michael's hesitation to defend me meant I wasn't worth defending. 3 a.m. doubts that made me question everything. But sitting in my car outside that estate, watching the party lights through the windows, I finally understood. The problem was never that I wasn't enough. The problem was that I'd been trying to earn approval from people who'd decided against me before they met me. I wasn't auditioning anymore. I was walking in to end the audition. The party was in the formal dining room. White tablecloths, crystal glasses. 25 guests, all turning to look as I entered. Barbara at the head of the table, Richard beside her, face carefully blank. Patricia to Barbara's left, looking stunning in cream. And Michael, sitting across from Patricia. His face was strange, closed off, like he'd heard something that had broken him. Next to Patricia, holding her hand, was the boy from the garden, Ethan. I looked at that boy. Really looked. Blonde hair like Patricia's, but the jaw, the eyes, the way he tilted his head when he was confused. I'd seen that posture 1,000 times. In wedding photos, in the mirror of my husband's face. The room was silent. Everyone waiting to see what I'd do. I walked to the table, sat in the only empty chair directly across from Michael. Barbara's mouth opened and closed. Patricia's hand tightened on Ethan's. "Michael," I said calmly, "what's going on?" His voice was barely a whisper. She didn't tell me. 6 years, she never told me. I understood then. The boy. Patricia's son. Michael's son. The son Barbara had known about. Had been hiding. Had been building a relationship with while keeping Michael in the dark. "You have a child," I said. Not a question. Michael nodded. Couldn't speak. I looked at Barbara. She was watching me with an expression I'd never seen. Fear. Pure, undisguised fear. I reached into my purse, pulled out the manila envelope, slid it across the white tablecloth toward Michael. "Sign these." Michael looked at the envelope. "What?" "Open it." He did. His face went gray. "These are divorce papers?" "Your mother wanted Patricia to be family so badly, now she can be." "I'm done." Barbara's hand flew to her chest. "You can't be serious." "I was protecting him," she said. Patricia asked me not to tell. She wasn't ready. The timing was never going to be right for you to be honest. I turned back to Michael. "Sign the papers. Go be with your son. I won't stand in the way of that." Michael stared at the documents, then at his mother, then at Patricia, who was crying quietly, mascara running. "Mom," he said slowly, "you knew. This whole time. You knew I had a son and you never told me." "Darling, it was complicated." Patricia wanted to wait. "Until what?" His voice rose. "Until you'd successfully destroyed my marriage? Until you'd pushed Brooke out and replaced her with the woman who kept my child from me?" He stood up, pushed his chair back. The sound echoed in the silent room. "I sat at this table for 2 years watching you treat my wife like garbage, telling myself you'd come around, telling myself I couldn't choose between my mother and my wife." He walked around the table, picked up the envelope with the divorce papers, and then, while everyone watched, he tore them in half. "I'm not signing anything. You're my wife. You're the only person in this room who's been honest with me." He turned to Barbara. "You and I are done. Don't call. Don't visit. Don't contact us. You lost that right 6 years ago when you decided to lie to me about my own child." Barbara's face crumpled. "Michael, please. I'm your mother. Patricia loves you. She's always loved you. I was trying to give you the family you deserved." "I had the family I deserved?" He took my hand. His grip was shaking but firm. "And you've spent 2 years trying to take her from me." That's when Barbara fainted. Actually fainted, collapsing sideways into Richard. The room erupted in chaos. Guests jumping up, someone calling for water, Patricia crying harder, Ethan looking terrified and confused. Michael and I walked out, through the marble foyer, past the family portraits, out into the cool September night. We drove away from that house, that family, that lie. We didn't speak for 10 minutes. Then Michael pulled over to the side of the road and broke down crying. I have a son. I have a son, and I didn't know. I held him while he cried. Held him while the weight of Barbara's betrayal crashed over him. Held him even though part of me was still in shock. We'll figure it out, I said. Together. We moved. Left Connecticut entirely, relocated to North Carolina where Michael got a job at an architecture firm, and I found work at a marketing agency. We bought a small house with a yard. Nothing fancy, nothing Barbara would approve of. We made it ours. Michael started therapy. Real therapy. The kind where you dig into why you spent 30 years letting your mother control your life. He's still working through it. Ethan is part of our lives now. Patricia fought it at first, threatened legal action. But Michael had documentation of Barbara's lies, proof that he'd never been told about the pregnancy. The court granted him partial custody. Ethan spends alternating weekends with us and 1 month in the summer. He's a good kid. Confused by all the adults and their complicated histories, but good. I'm not trying to be his mother. I'm trying to be someone he can trust. Barbara has called 17 times since we moved. Michael hasn't answered once. She sends letters claiming illness, financial trouble, profound regret. Michael says maybe someday he'll be ready to have a conversation. I don't push. Patricia and I will never be friends. We're civil for Ethan's sake. Maybe she was as manipulated by Barbara as the rest of us. I don't have energy to figure it out. Barbara told me once that I was temporary, that some women weren't family material, that Patricia was always meant to be family and I never would be. She was half right. I was never going to be part of her family. Her family was built on control and manipulation and lies that spanned 6 years. I didn't want to be part of that. But I'm not temporary. I'm Michael's wife. I'm building something real with someone who finally learned to choose. And Barbara, for all her scheming, ended up alone in a house full of expensive furniture and no one to share it with. That's not revenge. That's just consequences. If you've ever been told you weren't family by people who should have welcomed you, this is for you. If you've ever discovered that the people who should have loved you were secretly working against you, this is for you. If you've ever watched your spouse fail to defend you and finally seen them stand up when it mattered most, this is for you. You don't owe anyone your silence when they've given you their cruelty. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk into the room where they're trying to replace you, sit down, and show them exactly what they're going to lose. Tell me in the comments, has your spouse's family ever made you feel like an outsider? Did your partner stand up for you? I read every story. Subscribe for more stories about people who stopped accepting empty seats and started demanding respect. Sometimes the best response to, "You're not family," is, "You're right. I'm something better. I'm free."